Alrighty, welcome everybody to the Internet on Mondays, episode 1. I'm joined by Kuroki Tsukami.
And I'm joined by Unbreakable on my side. Hello everyone. So last time we've been talking about a lot of different stuff, mostly regarding space exploration, gaming, and other various in real life stuff. And we decided that it might be a good pattern to keep for the next session, which is today's session. We are going to be talking about SpaceX and space in general for the first part. Then we are going to go for gaming and factorio and a couple of interesting modding ideas, and then we're going to finish with some of the more specific things concerning recent Twitch TV changes and how it affects streamers in general and us personally.
Alrighty. So, the first thing, SpaceX, the Dragon launch. What was the name of it? I think CRS-11, which was the refueling or,
resupplying of the space station.
Right. The resupply of the space station, which was delayed, actually. If I got that right.
Yeah, it was delayed because of the weather conditions. The launch was planned for the June 1st, but the weather was so rough that they basically had to abort the mission, like at the last second, if I recall correctly, and then they had to swap to the transfer window for the June 3rd, and it arrived basically only yesterday to the station, so it took almost 2 days in flight to rendezvous and dock to the space station. And the most amazing thing of this mission was not only the resupplying of the station, it was the fact that it was the first reused Dragon capsule, because this Dragon capsule was launched twice. It was first launched almost 3 years ago in September of 2014 for the fourth CRS mission. CRS stands for Commercial Resupply Services, which is basically resupplying the space station with all the stuff except the crew. And now they finally made it so that it can go to space again and launch to space again, and it was a successful launch and docking. Everything went very smoothly. So what do you think about it? I know that you watched at least partially the webcast and a couple of photos. You also saw them. So what's your opinion on this?
Yep. So I have my article on space.com. We will link it as usual. I found it very interesting. I'm not gonna lie. This is some very interesting things that were going on. Of course, it being the first reused capsule makes it even more interesting, because Elon Musk was talking about it for a little while, that he wanted to reuse capsules, and this is the first one successfully, I might add, being reused. So I find this very, very intriguing and interesting. And all the photos, I saw the video of it launching from the ground and some space stuff. I didn't see the docking procedure. I was wanting to do so, but I kind of failed at it. So I find it very awesome. This is some really cool stuff which could bring us further into space exploration, of course. So these are some of my thoughts about it. Very interesting things. Very, very hyped about it.
Yeah, we can basically say that the Falcon-Dragon tandem is now officially fully reusable. What will be the result of this, we will see in the future, of course, because we don't really know how many times it will be possible to fully reuse the Dragon capsule. It proved itself to be very sturdy on the first re-entry, but the question is, what would happen when it basically goes back home after this mission? Because this is going to be the second time it re-enters the atmosphere. And of course, atmospheric re-entry is a very, very rough procedure for any piece of tech, especially such a high-tech thing as a fucking space capsule which can perform all the maneuvers and yeah. Also, on that note, very, very, very good job from both astronauts who piloted this, of course remotely from the cupola pod, because docking was so smooth. It's amazing, and it takes a long time to actually rendezvous with such a small distance, and then they actually used the robotic arm instead of like docking the craft immediately. And yeah, this looks majestic. Basically, I would definitely recommend everyone to watch this.
Yeah, we'll definitely give it a watch as well after this podcast, because I frankly just didn't have the time for it. I was kind of all over the place this week, so. But I find this very awesome to see Elon Musk finally, like, after saying, yeah, after we saw the Hyperloop stuff, after we saw, like, Boring Incorporated and SpaceX and him talking about reusable rockets, and finally getting to it and really launching one and actually, like, doing it for this first successful time. This is now really, really amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very, very hyped about it, like I said earlier. And we will see. I hope that the capsule can be used once more. Hopefully. Hopefully also successfully. That would make it even more awesome. Because, frankly, re-entering, the friction of the air and everything makes it extremely hard. I would suggest looking that up if you're interested into more of that. Maybe we can add something to the show notes about it. We'll see about it. But
I'm pretty hyped about the general moment of re-entry of this thing. I'm not sure if it will be possible to like watch it live. Maybe they would be able to set up at least some camera tracking like along the way. I'm not sure if they will though. But yeah, I really, really hope it goes well, because it's going to prove that SpaceX is finally like getting their things together.
Like, after we've seen all the fails and crashes, this is something very interesting, and I'm totally, if I can, I'm totally gonna watch it live. If the timing is right, of course.
Yeah. Also, one like small interesting fact is that it was 100th launch of a space vehicle for the launch site they used. They used Space Center Launch Complex 39, which was primarily used for shuttle launches.
Yep, 39A to be exact, yes.
Yep.
At NASA's Kennedy Space Center, Florida. Go on, apologies.
Yeah, almost every launch that was made from there was a shuttle launch. So it is basically like a go-to reusable launch site. And then after like a few years, it resumes its reusable launches with the second launch for the Dragon capsule. This is like everything is getting together. Everything is finally going to go well. This is amazing.
Yeah, this is definitely really amazing. I mean, talking about SpaceX just made me think of the Hyperloop, which I've seen some recent footage of, where they actually tested it in April, where they did the first test runs, and they seem to go okay, but there's still the issues if you do all the calculations, all the materials you need, etc., etc. So we will see. Like, seeing this finally happen could really mean like a upstep in mode of transportation, not only in space travel, but also on ground travel here on Earth. Because frankly, vacuum is pretty crazy. Like, that's not something you can just easily joke about. So we will see how Elon Musk and his teams and his companies, multiples of them, handle it. So this is definitely very interesting, and I can't wait to see what lies behind the mountain for this year. I mean, we have still half a year to go, so it's definitely very, very interesting.
So they actually did a test of this.
They actually did a test of this, yes.
I didn't know.
They did first capsule testing with, like actual, like proper size ones, but they actually did some proper testing with them. Although I question the liability of that, because they, like, how they did it is they had the tube, which is of course in a vacuum to reduce air resistance, right? So they basically pulled the air from the tube every time they did a test, instead of having like a what do you call it, like a port where you go in with, then the like whole tube is already like in a vacuum, or like a partial vacuum. You can't of course get it to a full vacuum. That's a topic for another time. But how they did it is like they took the full tube, sucked the air out of it with the like each like different capsule type in it, and sucked the whole air out of the full tube, instead of just having like a little part of it that can be adjusted. Like, so you have the full tube that's already has the air out, Then you have the like entry point where the car goes in, closes at both sides. The air gets sucked up from that smaller tube because it's less to pull out, so it uses less energy, of course. And yeah, I find this very interesting. It's not something I would have. It's something that I would have liked to see, but I guess this is this is still alpha stages, if you will. So we will see what it has to offer for the future.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I think I get the idea. Like, why would they use a single tube that they like decompress every time instead of having it constantly depressurized? Because I don't think they've used the material that is able to sustain prolonged negative pressure.
No, of course not. I mean, you still have you gotta think of it this way. It's built out of segments, right? So you also have to think about the material expansion. Metal under heat expands and contracts as it gets cooler as well. So you gotta think of it this way. And if you take the whole line between LA and what was it, like 6,000 kilometers full line from LA to somewhere in like the northwestern part of the Americas. I don't know the exact point. I apologize. But that will be 6,000 kilometers. And if you account that to the full expansion, Cody's Lab made a video on it on YouTube. Check it out if you want to, where he just busts the idea of Hyperloop. But it would contract and expand a total of 300 meters, which is a fuckload. Like, that's not something you can joke about. And, one of those bursts, like, not only you will be fucked, the one close to it, but also all the other passengers, because there will be multiple ones on that line, of course, to maximize the usage of it, not just one. So, if one of those bursts, everybody in that tube is, kind of dead. There's like you're traveling at almost like sound speed. Like, that is pretty damn fast. That's Mach 1. That's, I think, like 1.1 thousand kilometers per hour. If I got the numbers correctly.
Yeah, something like that. About 350 meters per second.
Something like that. Pretty damn fast. As fast as a bullet, basically. So.
And if you have a rough idea of what a sound barrier is, you can maybe even hear it if you have a military aircraft.
Yeah. If you ever wondered what those
near your house?
Maybe people saw that picture of that one aircraft with the water cone behind it, where it's like basically condensed water because of how fast it's going. So it's condensing the air into water. Like, that kind of stuff is pretty dangerous if not handled correctly.
And basically, hitting an atmosphere going at high speeds is like getting hit by a very big hammer. So yeah, that's definitely going to be injurious in this case. But I think if you are building a proper line, it is possible to create a system that is going to maintain certain like weather conditions near it. So like it doesn't really heat up a lot, or maybe it doesn't really get a lot of condensed
I mean, you could build it on the ground. You can build it on the ground. Like, think of it this way. This is basically.
I don't think he's going to go for a surface build, to be honest.
I mean, think of it this way. At CERN, the LHC, Large Hadron Collider, it's underneath the Earth, which is good because the metal doesn't expand as quickly because you have a controlled environment. If you do it above ground, you will need a controlled environment to make sure that the whatever material you use doesn't expand as crazy, or if it expands, not to like a level this large. So I would see it being underground. That would just make a lot of sense to me.
This like semi-fantastic concept of a gravity powered train where you basically have a straight line that goes through the Earth's mantle, yeah, and it is constantly being cooled down out there, and you also have a lot of compressors that basically maintain low air pressure, and then you basically just drop a train in, and it accelerates until the middle point, and it starts slowing down, and then it arrives at the final station. And of course, not going as deep as the mantle, but like going like 10 kilometers into the ground or something like that, which would be like still a rather nice way of transporting between different cities. And Mm.
I
Yeah,
don't know what to
it's
think of it, to be honest. It seems like a really cool idea on paper, but once you actually get to it and realize like all the safety precautions, so if there is a failure, that you can get those people out, like
you basically can't.
yeah,
So the Hyperloop, which is not being like that deep underground, it is being powered by maglev instead of like just pure gravity, is a much more realistic concept. And by the way, speaking of like contracting parts that contract and expand because of the temperature, uh, I feel like the biggest problem is not going to be the deformation of the track, but just air leaks, basically, because even a slightest hole between two parts is going to cause some air leakage. And
yeah,
so you
you
have
can
to,
think of it as like an airplane at like 10 kilometers air height, which is like commercial air flight height. Where if you have decompression, which is basically that, where you have two different parts of an atmosphere that are under different pressures, those, if there is a leak, will decompressurize. And if that happens, the passengers could obviously get hurt. Like if you're in a commercial aircraft liner and you're flying above like 10,000 meters or 10 kilometers, you are most likely, just because of that pressure, just gonna like get out of oxygen, because you got to think of it this way: you're in a vacuum tube traveling at the speed of sound, and you have to consider also all the like seals between each tube. So like Cody's lab did the calculation, so full props to him. I don't want to steal any of the props from him, so go check him out. His video is great, but you would have to need 60,000 different pressure seals, which is pretty big. Like that's not something you can really just say like, okay, just do it, because you would have to deal with 60,000 individual seals that would need to be checked periodically to make sure that if they're worn out, you can take the tube apart, replace it, and then use it again. That is a pretty big feat, and it would need a lot of maintenance.
I feel like eventually they have to go for a compromise. So, like, not have a full vacuum inside, but just very low pressure, so that it reduces energy losses to this air. And like, they also, of course, have to have a lot of compressors throughout the entire line, basically maintaining this low pressure. And then, of course, thinking that this thing is going to be using magnetic levitation instead of, actual rail track. So there is going to be another energy gain. So we're not going to be losing energy to, like, basically wheels on rails. And so, yeah, I feel like the biggest problem is not going to be even the safety of the passengers, because it's rather easy, because this train is not going to be in the tube for much longer. So it's like going to take a few minutes to go from here to there, and then it can be repressurized and checked.
Well, I mean, you're talking about 6,000 kilometers, which would take you roughly 2.5 hours, which is a pretty impressive time. That is pretty impressive. Normally, when you drive with your car, which I can say for sure because I go every year to Macedonia myself, so that's about 1,600 kilometers of a trip, right? Or about 2,000 if I go to Albania for vacation, which I'm going to do this year again in middle of July. So this would take you about 18 hours for about 1,600 kilometers at roughly 105 kilometers per hour average. So it's an impressive feat, but it's still like 2.5 hours. It's still a pretty long time. Like, that is.
I feel like I can always compare this to an aircraft, basically. So
True.
compare this to an existing way of fast transportation, an aircraft. Which one is going to be cheaper? Which one is going to be more flexible? Because the aircraft is obviously more flexible than the Hyperloop. And,
of course.
Maybe Hyperloop maintenance will be much cheaper, maybe not. It depends on the energy sources we're going to be using for that. And
I mean, he was talking about solar, so you would potentially get more energy out of the loop than you would be using. So if you have solar panels on top of this, like, Hyperloop tube, then you could make energy basically just with materials. Like, when we're playing Factorio, you have obviously, like, the solar panels that you use for energy. It's basically free energy for a one-time cost, of course. And you usually get more out of it than you actually use. right?
Eventually, yeah, of course.
Eventually, yes. We're talking exponential, of course. Or, some time constraints and material constraints, etc., but we're not going to get into the math of that. But essentially, you can get a lot more power out of it than you could initially imagine, which is amazing, of course, because that would supply quite a large area with basically free energy, which is quite amazing.
Yeah.
So,
but that's relatively in the future, even though they are already doing some testing. And what is not in the future, however, is Factorio itself.
Yes, of course. Perfect timing. We're going to go into the next segment, which is Factorio modding. And speaking of the Hyperloop, I had an idea today that we wanted to talk about. The trains in Factorio. Pretty slow, pretty boring. Just basic stuff. So I saw this whole Hyperloop stuff today, and I came up with an idea of having basically an Hyperloop in Factorio, which is of course doable. Just need a bit of programming. So it's completely doable. So, what do you think of that? What are your initial impressions about it?
Well, my initial impressions were that this is a very interesting idea, and there are a few ways to approach this, of course.
Of course.
And, immediately into my head, I popped two different ways. We can either make, a kind of modification to existing rails, which basically keep the mechanics, and just make the trains go faster, and then require more resources to build them. And then you said about trains basically teleporting, and then it struck me that we might even want to just pretend that this is underground, that everything is underground other than a station, then have an entry point into the virtual Hyperloop system, and then an exit point, and not have to build anything in between them. Just the maintenance cost would be high. So you basically have an entry point for the train, like a station. Then you have a lot of compressors to maintain negative air pressure, and this thing draws a lot of power for the magnetic levitators, and the train itself is pretty costly. Maybe it's going to use the farther you go, the more energy it uses, so it has an internal capacity bank.
Maybe even exponential. The farther you go, the lot more will it cost. For 1 kilometer, let's say for 1,000 tiles, it will cost let's just say 100 kilowatts, right? Just a random number. This is not by any stretch of the imagination a real thing, but let's just talk random numbers. Let's say 1,000 tiles, 100 kilometers. So let's say you go 2,000 tiles, so you make it 1,000 kilowatts, etc. So you go exponential instead of linear, which I think would make a lot of sense. And you could also argue you would need to use create helium or something in somehow maybe bind it together with Angel's mods. So you would need to process helium, gather it from the aluminum you make or whatever, or somehow generate it, and take that helium and use it to cool the system, because you're using a maglev train basically. So you would need to cool the system to power the magnets, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I just realized that, because we have to use superconductors. Superconductive magnets. You have to cool everything down. You have to cool the whole system.
As well as making the magnets as well. So you would need to actually make magnets, have a separate factory just for this train. So it would make the initial cost of it would need to be really high. And the maintenance cost would also need to be pretty high. And it kind of binds into this whole idea that it is pretty damn fast. You don't forget that this would be an endgame solution to fast train systems in a different way. Instead of using I don't know, coal or electricity, you use a lot of materials in the beginning. The track is basically free, because it's kind of hard to make you use track but not be able to see it and not be able to collide with itself, because that would be one of the features of this mod, that you would have a train that never collides. You don't need signals, you don't need train stops, or you do need train stops, but you don't need signals in between. So you could just go wherever you want with it, and it will never collide with itself or with another Hyperloop train.
This is basically the same concept as Factorio devs are already using for late game, because imagine a nuclear reactor. It's a high cost setup, high cost maintenance initially, but eventually it doesn't consume anything. So if you set up a solar system, you have to use a lot of space and a lot of resources, and eventually it doesn't cost anything as well. But if you are using coal, the setup is low cost, but it doesn't give you much gain, and you have to constantly supply it with everything.
Right. So it
And
has like a
nuclear,
pretty high maintenance cost, but a low initial cost, basically.
yeah. And here we go for the oh my god, sorry. Here we go for the like the second way of approaching things, the high
I'm like
setup cost.
high setup cost, high initial maintenance. So like if you look at Covarex enrichment and the uranium processing, you have a very high initial cost because of how much you're producing. But over time, it will stockpile upwards, and then it will get exponentially cheaper, right? If that makes any sense. Like cheaper as in a sense of like you get material basically, for free at some point. For free in, brackets, of course. Like it's not really free, but you get the idea. Like a low cost, basically.
Using a very cheap material to create a very expensive material through using a lot of energy and time.
Right. Which would make a lot of sense because helium processing wouldn't be cheap and you will need it for superconductors. So those things need to be cooled pretty low. And you need to constantly, like, give it helium to make sure that you use it. But what you could also do is, like, reuse the used up helium and, like, what do you call it?
Cool it back, basically?
Pull it back. Like, you get a helium output that is, like, very dirty, it's used up, and you need to recompress it and, clean it, recompress it, and then you can use it again.
The same way nuclear reactors work in real life, because you have waste
spent nuclear fuel and spent
nuclear fuel.
Yeah,
and spent steam, and you have to cool everything down because if steam just disappeared from a nuclear reactor, you have to use a ridiculous amount of water, like it happens in game. But in real life, we can reprocess everything. And one might argue that using like basically a teleporting train, of course not instantly, but like technically
with a timer, maybe like use it as a teleporting technique just to make it easy on the background. And so it doesn't also use like a lot of like processing power, because otherwise this would use a ton of processing power if you actually calculated these fast speeds. And we're talking ridiculous distances, so it's just much easier to just teleport it.
Of course, it's much easier because you can basically calculate the distance and input a fixed formula for this. Like so the train accelerates this fast, and it has to accelerate half of the track and then slow down another half of the track. Anyway, technical stuff doesn't matter. What really matters is that one might think that this is overpowered, but then come to think of it, when you like pair this thing up with mods, with Bob's mods, with Angel's mods, well, it suddenly becomes not OP.
Just a quick side note, just because you're talking about it. I apologize for interrupting you, but talking about this made me think that you would probably not want this in a vanilla game. This is really more for modded. Like, we're talking high-end modded, like Bob's, Angels, Yuoki, that kind of stuff, where you really need this kind of mode of transportation for cargo or yourself. Where you're like, oh, okay, this needs a ridiculous amount of power and resources and everything, but the output is crazy, and you will need it at the end game, right? Just to make your life a lot easier. So, at the end of the day, don't use... I would think we would enable, like, if we actually did it, which, we will think about. You would actually need to use, like, a lot of, like, endgame stuff, and maybe even go post rocket launch, where you actually need space science to unlock the science for it.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Because, like, when you start adding those mods into a vanilla game, you come to a point when you need more mods. So basically, if you have a factory that needs this much throughput, then you might as well like get a better processing things and get better like assemblers and get more recipes and get like more high tier things to actually maintain this whole thing. So it basically drags itself upwards and forces you to use a lot of mods if you use something like that. It's basically like, I don't know, not speaking of Minecraft, but playing Minecraft with one very big mod that is somewhat useless because you're not using all of those materials for something else.
Right, because like a lot of mods have like materials that they don't use just for themselves. Like if you look at Bobs and Angels, you're kind of bound to use both because of how they interact with one another. And how you're supposed to interact with one another, because if you don't have like Angels refining and all that kind of stuff, you will run out of ore patches really quickly. So you need like Angels ores and Angels refining to get more out of your ore and all that kind of garbage. So at the end of the day, you're kind of bound to use like a heavily modded mod pack for this kind of a scenario. So going vanilla, maybe if people really wanted it, you could make it, but I highly doubt it, because either you go full modded or you just leave it be altogether, right? Because you will not need this kind of a throughput in a vanilla game anyways. Like when we're talking about these kind of numbers, like we're talking about like a train that could go 1,000 tiles in a matter of like 20 seconds instead of 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever it takes for a normal train.
Yeah, like it depends on the design and fuel used, but yeah, it's something like that. And I feel like vanilla trains are actually enough for a vanilla game, even though you may have to use bigger designs, like 10 wagons long, so like a 383, the usual stuff, which is basically not even 10, it's 14 wagons long, and it has a ridiculous throughput, but it's enough for the vanilla game. But as soon as you get to mods,
you will need a lot more.
There's a bigger variety of resources and cargo as well.
Right. You start getting used to like using Farl for making automated tracks, so you don't need to worry about it too much. Then you start going into the senses of like Bob's trains, where you have like Mark II and Mark III and Mark IV trains where they go ridiculously fast. Of course, you need the train tracks for it, which is one of the reasons why I came up with the idea that either you have like a ridiculously expensive track and low maintenance, that kind of stuff, or you go, you just leave the track altogether, just get rid of it and say it's going underground, so you don't have to deal with intersections or that kind of stuff. So it's just a lot easier to set up, has a higher maintenance cost, has a higher initial cost. So there's trade-offs with everything, and I think these trade-offs sound really cool. Just need to come down once we really get into it, which, is still debatable. We don't know yet, but we're just mostly talking about it. If somebody's interested and wants to do it with us, we're happy to talk. Feel free to contact us.
Yeah, basically, just going to take some time for 3D modeling, because 3D modeling for Factorio is like, it's easy, but it's not really easy, because you have to mess with sprite exports and etc. Because it doesn't really use 3D models. It uses like specific shots taken at certain angles transposed into 2D graphics from those 3D models, even though they model things in 3D. Yeah,
it's like a semi-3D that you see on like shopping sites where they show something in 3D, but instead it's just like a lot of photos that you can rotate. So it feels 3D, but it really isn't.
Yeah, they don't. That's like the basic reason why I didn't make a single transportation mod, single like car mod for Factorio, because for buildings you have to like use 4 pictures, because it can be rotated either north, south, east, west. That's all.
Or you can just use one and just call it a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, like Angels, for example, Angels, none of this stuff, when you rotate it, only like the outputs rotate. And he made the design so that it looks like there's always a piping somewhere. So it rotates like 360, but it doesn't really rotate, only the output rotates. But it looks like it doesn't look like it rotates, because it doesn't really, just the output that goes somewhere else, which there is already a pipe for, so like there's no need to rotate it really. Like in a sense of like a sprite way where you actually rotate the sprite. So it's like the lazy way of doing things, but it's also better. So it doesn't, like Factorio doesn't have to load as many sprites and graphics and all that kind of stuff.
Also, you don't have to draw all those sprites and graphics, like make them.
Yeah.
Because a Factorio transport uses a ridiculous amount of animation, like a ridiculous amount. And this is very annoying to actually export this, because you have to like set up a proper thing to do this for you, because otherwise you're going to want to kill yourself after like you do this 20 times in a row. So you have to make a script or something like that that's going to export like all those 128 different angles. Then also the animation and like separate. For example, the tank uses I think 3 separate graphics for its body, like for its cannon, and for maybe 2. I don't remember.
Yeah, there's also the like Corex enrichment thing, or the what do you call it? The like thing that the what do you call it? The thing that rotates and like separates the uranium between
centrifuge. Right.
Yeah, the centrifuge, exactly. That uses like I think 16 different images for the shadow, the glow effect, and the machine itself. So it's just absolutely crazy.
Basically, the more the block, the structure does, the more stuff you have to put into it, and like. The usual thing about like adding lighting, shadows, and like all the specular and highlights and all this garbage, and then you have to animate everything, then you have to export everything. Oh,
yeah, I think you spend most of the time making the graphics instead of the code itself, which I find kind of hilarious. To be fair, the trains do look pretty sweet for being 2D. You gotta give it that. They look pretty sweet. Tell me if you're wrong, they look good.
I feel like everything that they updated into HD looks amazing. Like it's like just wow, just wow.
Yeah.
And trains especially, and the tank, and
all the entities, basically.
I can't wait until they actually update biters, because I feel like they should do it at some point.
Like a Godzilla biter.
I'm not really sure. They look outdated a little bit, to be honest.
I mean,
Like
as they are currently, they don't really have a use other than like annoying the living hell out of you. And just being a nuisance in general. I would love to, like, if you went like a green route kind of thing, you know, where you don't use like steam engines that heavily and you don't create as much pollution and, you know, that kind of stuff, where you could actually start trading with them and like it makes technology easier and you don't have to deal with them, but you have to go a green route, you know?
Yeah, I think there was a bunch of suggestions of this theme on the suggestions part of the forum. I don't remember what exactly Deft said about those things, but I feel like they didn't really want to go this path. They said something like, if you want, you can mod it, but we're not going to add this into vanilla. And I feel like they are actually going to add a different use for biters now that the artifacts are out of the game. I think they might at least, because otherwise you may just remove those, all of them, and there is so much military tech in games, so it doesn't really feel good removing biters from the game whatsoever.
No, he also said in the AMA he did on Reddit a couple days ago, something along the lines of that they want to do something with biters, but not as soon as people might think, because they got a lot, like they have the GUI that they need to work on for 16x. And, you know, all that kind of stuff, so they have other things to think about other than the biters for the time being.
Yeah, so basically they have to update the whole game once again. Like, as
not really
approaching the release.
Just a warfare part about it. Because the general warfare part about Factorio seems very... Now in 15x, it seems very outdated, where they're just there because you had alien science before, which was just temporarily, until they get to, like, this high-tech and production science and military science and all that kind of stuff that just came new with 15x. So, I hope they're at least doing something interesting with them, where you're not forced to fight them, you know? That would be my wish, but I highly doubt it, because there's a lot of warfare technology in it. But then again, you could just mod it.
This warfare technology, like, it is so amazing. So, like, they finally made it more or less balanced in terms of like combat and the combat in different stages of the game, and it all looks cool, and the tank is amazing, and like all the flamethrower things and the nukes, and now there's just no real use for it all. So yeah.
And the only use for them is when you actually have biters enabled and you just want to get rid of them because they're being a nuisance. That's really the only use for them.
That's kind of counterproductive to have biters that don't really make anything, and you still have to fight them. And there is there are cool ways of fighting them, so this is a pleasing experience to combat in this game. It's a nice experience, but there is no real result of that other than, you know, actually getting more resources. So like getting something out of them would be nice, but yeah, that's it has to wait because they have to update the game. I mean, like I'm not like in terms of gameplay, but just more in terms of like graphics and stuff.
Yeah, I would like to see them having a use again, where you actually, like, I don't know, where you could actually do something useful with them, where you take them into, like, a science lab and research them, you know, the bodies itself, and then you get, like, some sort of a science pack out of it, and then you can use that for something else, where you craft that up with, like, another science pack that you can make, and get like a higher tier science pack, something that you can use for like really endgame stuff. Like the current thing is, once you have the rocket thing, that's like the last research basically. There's nothing after it, which is kind of sad. But then again, he talked also in the AMA about like space exploration in a kind of sense where you can have a space base and get materials from there, and so it would be interesting. I hope they tie it in somewhat interestingly.
That's an old idea, like the whole asteroid base. It's a very old idea. It's like I think 3 years old.
Yeah, but he still got it. He still has it. He said in the AMA that he's still talking about it, and he still wants to do it, so I'm interested. I don't guess only time will tell.
Yeah. And like I had a sudden idea. Like there is a factorio mod, right? That basically creates a new dimension for your factory, right?
The
Inside the building.
factorio mod.
Yeah, the factorio.
Yeah,
So
but
you
that's
can go
just
inside.
buildings. That's just buildings.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, technically, it creates a new dimension, so it's possible
Yeah.
to do this. So you can, in theory, tie this to a rocket launch and make some system to basically allow you to teleport up there, for example, and then use this and add some cool graphics inside or whatever. But that's for next time, I think. Yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah, let's talk about that next time, because this time, next up, we have a little bit of a Twitch talk.
Yeah, that might not be very interesting for everyone, but some people are
maybe gonna be
streaming as well.
in it.
Yeah, maybe some people are going to be interested in that. So you start, because I don't really have a clue what you're going to be talking about.
So
okay,
let's start. So 2 weeks ago, roughly, I got my affiliation with Twitch. So I got people can finally send me bits on my Twitch account, which is kind of interesting, but also kind of stupid for various reasons that I will get into in a little bit. And just generally how Twitch is going at the moment seems very weird, but we will leave that maybe for another time how it's going. Let's talk about affiliation, Twitch, and the bit system for smaller streamers. Someone like me, for example.
Okay, so what is affiliate program? Because you are in it, I'm out of it. I'm not in it yet, so you know more. So just tell me what it is, describe it to me, because I really want to know.
So the affiliate program from Twitch basically requires you to have 500 minutes of stream time in the last week. It requires you to have at least 7 unique broadcast days in the last 30 days, 500 total minutes of broadcasting in the last 30 days, an average of 3 concurrent viewers over more than the last 30 days, and at least 50 followers. That's how you get affiliate. And it's automatic. Like, they don't check it like with people. It's just fully automatic.
And so you basically have to be a streamer. Basically have to stream at least a couple of days, have at least a viewer, maybe a couple of viewers.
Yeah, a couple of viewers.
Stream more or less regularly for more than 5 minutes. Every day.
Probably more to like an hour, I would assume.
Yeah, so like 500 minutes is close to 10 hours a month, and this is like if you stream like 10 times a month, you can stream an hour, and we are streaming much more than that. So yeah, basically, I feel like as soon as I get to 50 followers, I am going to be affiliated.
Probably, maybe, because I got like I was away from Twitch for quite a while since last year. In what was it? Middle August, I kind of went away. I kind of got into Beam, which is now called Mixer, which I'm not a real fan of, to be honest. So I kind of came back to Twitch again about month and a half ago. And seeing all of this, it's kind of cool. And there's still a lot of things in the work, like being able to have like tier 1 subscriptions where people can subscribe to you for $5. But you only get like 60 or 65% of it instead of like 90%, which the people were not just affiliated, but also like properly bound to Twitch, like the, what do you call it?
The partnership, you mean?
Yeah, partnership. People that are partnered, they get a lot more from the subscriptions than like somebody who was an affiliate, which is still something in the works and still not quite released.
I feel like the partnered streamers used to get 50%. Always,
they used to. They get a lot.
So now they get more money.
They get a lot more nowadays. Because Twitch was like 50% is a lot. That is a shitload of money. Like 50% for a big streamer. Let's like Summit1G, for example. He makes, I would say, roughly in the neighborhood of 20,000 a month with YouTube, Twitch, and so on. And like just Twitch subscriptions, I think a couple thousand a month. So just from one streamer, they get a couple thousand. So it's pretty crazy when you talk like proper numbers. But for somebody like me, like small as me, like I just had the other day my first bit donation of 50 bits, which is basically 50 cents. And the other thing is you need at least before we get into money, the other thing you need to do is like do the whole tax interview. So you need to fill out, I think, like 6 or 7 different papers if you're like me and like not in the US. So you have to fill out so many a stupid amount of papers to be eligible. And it's just crazy at that point. And you only get so much out of it, and you only can get like take the money you get from bits or subscriptions once you have reached $100, which from bits just will take forever as a smaller streamer. Like somebody like me was currently at a bit more than 430 followers and, rough average view numbers of 6 viewers. It's kind of hard to actually get that money out of it. I would rather say, okay, here's my donation link on Streamlabs and you just donate to me and I can, every $25, I can take the money out of it. Or here's my Patreon and, all that kind of stuff, or Subbable or whatever. So, interesting approach, but they definitely need to work on it. It's kind of sad, really, more than cool. I like the idea, but the implementation is kind of weird.
They're still thinking about it from the perspective of making money, of course.
Yes, we're talking about a business end right here. Like, for generally, I don't see streaming as a job at the moment. It's fun, it's a really cool hobby, but I cannot say it's a job, unfortunately. So, but you still got to think about the money about it, because like at the end of the day, if you can get like money from people for doing something, for doing a service, then who doesn't say no to it, right? Like there's nobody who will not say no for you doing a service. And one of these services is entertainment. So Twitch streaming, that regard, is basically a service, because you're not like producing, like, I don't know, you're not making like a fidget spinner, which, I just brought up the topic just to make you hate me even more.
Yeah.
But you get the idea. You're not producing a product like gasoline or a car or a phone or toys or whatever. You're doing a service, which, like a plumber does a service, a logistician or a post office worker, he does a service. And entertainment is basically just a service. So I find this, I don't know. I really don't know what to think of it. Cool, but very poorly implemented for smaller streamers.
I feel like smaller streamers are still going to, keep just using PayPal donations.
Yes, definitely. And people are still going to use Patreon and all that kind of stuff, or GameWisp or whatever.
Yeah, because bits in general is a wonky thing, to be honest, because you kind of get money for free for watching ads, but not really. And you can kind of donate this money, but not really again. So
it's hard and bound, so people can't abuse it with like bots or something like that. So there I guess there's a good reason why you don't get many bits for watching ads, because people would abuse it, like set up a bot and abuse the living hell out of the system to get basically free money, or use the system for money laundering or something.
But you have to keep in mind that this free money is constantly being rotated inside Twitch itself. So the more money they're moving inside the system, the more profit they make.
Of course.
And again, speaking like from the business perspective, this is first of all a way for Twitch to make more money.
Or in that case, Amazon.
Yeah, well, basically Amazon. Because this whole Amazon Prime thing, because like free subscription, quote unquote, with Amazon Prime.
It seems fucked up. Think of it this way. I'm here in Switzerland, where I don't have Amazon at all. And I'm not, like, the next country is Germany, and I can't use that because I'm in Switzerland and how Switzerland laws are handled. I can't do that, so I have to, if I want to get, like, cool shipping features from a really cool, like, company to actually ship me stuff, like, there's nothing I can do about it in Switzerland. I have a different online shop for, like, every different kind of genre of product. So I have, like, my technology shop, I have my game shop, all that kind of stuff. And you don't get anything out of it. I have to buy Nitro. I can't just go ahead and buy like Amazon Prime and get free Nitro for it, as well as a free subscription to somebody I might like and want to give them something for free. So I can't even do that, which I find very, very stupid,
Well, that's mostly due to Switzerland laws, not
but like
Amazon themselves.
I still find it stupid that there isn't like a system where you could be like, here, the Nitro users, if you decide to go Nitro instead of Prime, because you don't have Amazon, at least you can sub to somebody that you
it's
like.
Like the backwards system.
Where it's like, me with Nitro, where I'm actually paying money to Twitch and not Amazon, get less features than I'm paying Amazon directly, even though I'm paying Amazon either way, right? And it costs either way the same amount of money. I think even Twitch Prime is slightly cheaper because Amazon Prime is slightly cheaper than Twitch Nitro. So at the end of the day, I find the system kind of fucked up, to be very honest with you.
Well, it's still a work in progress. I think that eventually they're going to combine it to a global subscription
I
for
hope so.
Amazon
I hope so.
and Twitch and every other service.
I hope
This
so,
would
even
make a lot
though
of
I
sense.
can't really use it, to be fair, which I find annoying.
Well, like, it's going to cost the same amount of money. It's going to give you everything, so why not buy it anyway? And at some point, you might even use it.
True.
Yeah.
True. So yeah, I don't know. You guys can tell us if you want to. What do you guys think about it on SoundCloud? Leave a comment on this time and tell us what you think about it. What you think about Twitch and the affiliate partner program, all that kind of stuff, on a more of a business end rather than talking about it as a hobby. Because this was more about like a business talk where we talk straight numbers and money, and where we're not talking about like of course, like Twitch streaming is a lot of fun, and I do it mostly for the fun of it. But you also, when you can make money out of a hobby and turn it into a job, you might as well do it, right? So you have to consider business, like the business end of it as well.
You know what's funny?
Go for it.
The whole Twitch is like wonky payment systems and like all of this affiliate program that is being still a very, very work in progress, and bits that are also not in the best condition right now. There is no better service that allows you to make money from basically producing entertaining content, because YouTube is worse.
Oh, YouTube is way worse. YouTube is way worse.
Like, we can rant forever about how bad is Twitch for small streamers, how it's difficult to like rise and like get viewers and then like make some profit, because like, yeah, again, it's fun, but as soon as you combine fun and profit, it becomes 10 times as fun. And then we like look at YouTube, and then it's just like, oh, okay, so it can be that bad.
Yeah, it can be bad. YouTube is really bad. Like, that is not a joke. Like, YouTube monetization and DMCA is like not even bad. It's like terry bad, which is like a mix of terrible and bad, which is like, how can the CEO of YouTube allow this? We're like, if you look at like DMCA claims where people just can start claiming stuff for bullshit that is not even true, where they can just claim a video just for funsies and they don't get punished for it. So like,
yeah, definitely.
Like, that's something I find very, very crazy. Like, I don't want to paint names, but if somebody saw the video about it, like one of the more well-known people that is Russian that does like these hack videos, like, real life hack videos where he, like, you know what I mean?
The crazy Russian hacker, right?
I'm not naming names, but
yeah,
you guys can paint your own picture of who I'm thinking of.
Well,
there
has been so many problems.
This person just bought up an DMCA claim for like a video he did where he advised people to use solid, like, what do you call it? Carbon dioxide, right? So, dry ice basically to cool their room, which obviously can kill you, right? That is like, that can kill you over a longer period of time if you don't have a well ventilated area. And somebody else made a video about it, and he just filed a DMCA claim, even though he didn't even, like, he had the video in a fair use manner, which is another thing. Like, where is the fair use? And there's nothing really done about it, which I find very sad. And it's just,
there's been a lot of drama about DMCA claims.
Well, I didn't want to call it directly drama because I don't want to deal with drama, but
yeah,
it's something that happened and requires a bit of closer attention than normal, I would say.
Yeah, but DMCA claims are more like from the user perspective problem. So that like some people are claiming your content and YouTube doesn't have anything to do with it. The fun thing that happened recently, like fun is in quotes, of course, is that YouTube has created this like separate advertising platforms, kinda. So like some companies don't want their ads to be shown on videos they don't like, basically.
Yeah, which
and
can be
the system is automatic.
Right. I don't know a whole lot about it. Just a real quick side note. I don't know a lot about it. I haven't looked really into it. I just know the basics of it. Go further. Sorry.
The basic idea is that everyone who was making, like, almost every single big YouTuber has lost like 70% of their income because of that. Because their ad revenue dropped like to 1/3 of what they were getting. Because and some videos got completely demonetized because they used like words like death or murder or like something,
or like where they
something
talk about
offensive.
being happy, and you know, they have a
It can
tag as
be,
like suicide prevention, and then like a suicide
yeah,
prevention
yeah.
video gets the monetization taken off just because it has the word suicide in it.
Yes. And even like something completely offside, like a gameplay video, like, I don't know, maybe
like talking about factorio death world, and then it gets demonetized just because it has
yes,
death in it, which is just
yes.
absolutely bonkers.
And the thing is, it doesn't even get demonetized because you still get ads on it. You just don't get any ads because of the guys that are responsible for placing ads on videos. They do not allow it because, like, for example, Coca-Cola doesn't want their product to be advertised in a video that has something about death in it. And then suddenly Coca-Cola doesn't get any ads placed on any YouTube video. And then they're just like, oh, okay, we're not making any money from that, and we're just going to stop using YouTube as an advertisement platform whatsoever. And then YouTube starts losing money, and then all the content creators start losing money. And then basically, if I understand correctly, it's almost impossible for anyone who is not like 100% child-friendly to
monetize their videos and make profit out of it. Yeah. Like if you look at gameplay videos, like if you're talking about like Factorio is a good example here actually, when you're playing a deaf world and you know you have to put that in the title, otherwise people will maybe not watch it because that's how you need to make titles nowadays.
You have to put it somewhere because of the SEO, and then because of the same SEO problem you don't get any advertisements because the same data is being used to filter ads on a video, and this is just absurd. This is absurd.
Well, it's an automatic system, which is where the problem lies. Like, if you have something like this where it's automated, but it makes such a big impact, then you gotta really question yourself, do you really want it automated, or just do you want to say you can't monetize until you get like 10,000 subscribers, you know?
But the problem hits big channels. The problem hits million subscriber channels.
Right, of course. But even then, like, this mainly happened because of, like, terrorist videos on YouTube where like the person itself wasn't really making much money out of it, like a couple $100 from one video for like ever. Like they're not like, I don't know, PewDiePie where they upload a video like weekly or monthly or something, or like Brady Haran or CGP Grey as another example, where they upload like really interesting videos and talk about something like death in a serious manner, and then you just get demonetized for something so stupid. It's just ridiculous, really. Like,
yeah,
doesn't make any sense to me.
Causes even not the YouTube, it causes companies because like it all started because of those people who complained that like the same like soda advertisements are in the middle of a terrorist attack video, and then you're just watching like people dying all over the place, and then it's just like
why don't you want to drink a cola?
Starts, yeah, why don't you go drink a cola? It's then
ridiculous.
People keep dying. Yeah, that was basically the case. So yeah. I don't know. Like,
yeah, it's one of those topics that is really questionable, which ties into where's the fair use, and like YouTube is all about, oh yeah, we want to make sure that our YouTube creators are, you know, the best and they get the best treatment, and then shit like this happens. Where I just gotta say, do you really think that, or do you just say it just so people stay on your platform? Like, you know, it's kind of ridiculous, really.
People stay on YouTube because there is no real alternative, to be honest. Like,
True.
Twitch is kind of starting to do this, like, with the new vodcast features.
Which I hate, by the way.
Yeah, because it shows up as an extra stream and then there's just a rebroadcast. And why the fuck would you do that? And, like, you can even, I think, upload videos there if you wanted to.
Yeah, and use that as a vodcast, which is just ridiculous. Like, I don't know. Or they're wanting to do that anyways. They haven't implemented it yet, but... Yep. They talked about it in their blog post that they will implement it in the future, probably. Most likely.
Yeah, so maybe it's time to start looking for a new platform at some point. But
maybe.
Those discussions happened a lot of times in the past. So, Yeah, we can't do anything about it anyway. So that's the general picture of Twitch, YouTube,
monetization and all that kind of
entertainment
stuff.
and entertaining content and monetization, trying to actually make money from entertaining people.
Which is a viable option. Like I said, it's just a service, like a plumber or, your car mechanic or whatever.
Or a musician, or a singer,
or a singer, musicians, general artists, like
or
movie artists,
a radio host,
or a radio host. Comes down to the same thing. So I think we got the topic pretty well here. So, yeah.
If you have any ideas, comments, or suggestions for the next podcast, you can put them down there below the file in the comments on the SoundCloud. At some point, I'm going to buy a webcam and we are going to upload those things on YouTube, but for now, only SoundCloud.
Yep, for now it will stay SoundCloud. Maybe in the future when you get a webcam finally, because I already have one. We will get to it. Maybe even live stream one of our podcasts in the future. We will think about that kind of stuff. Anyways, so that marks the end of episode 1 of this podcast. If you have any suggestions for this podcast in general, anything you'd like to say to us directly, feel free to come along either directly under this podcast on SoundCloud, contact us on Twitch when we're live in our chats, or just leave a message somewhere.
For now, thank you very much for listening. I'm Kuro.
I'm Unbreakable.
Goodbye. See you next time.